Hello there. Daniel Penny is acquitted in the end of Jordan Neely on Subway. This is a story that has been in the news for quite a while. Essentially, there was a homeless person with certain mental disorders on a subway, and he was threatening the other passengers and making them feel very uncomfortable. I believe he tried to. I don't know. Anyway, he was stopped by Mr. Penny, and he is gone. Mr. Penny choked Mr. Neely in a minutes-long struggle on the floor of an F train. The case reflected the pathologies of post-pandemic New York, says the New York Times. So, the left obviously has been on the track of this is a racist vigilante attack by Mr. Neely, Mr. Penny, Daniel Penny, against Mr. Neely, who was black, and Mr. Daniel Penny is white, incidentally. So he is also a former Marine, and he was accused of criminally negligent homicide. He was acquitted on Monday, ending a case that had come to exemplify New York City's post-pandemic struggle. That's the narrative from the New York Times. The jurors decided that Mr. Penny's actions were not criminal when he held the rider, Jordan Neely, in a chokehold as the two men struggled on the floor of a subway car on May 1st, 2023. Mr. Neely, who was homeless and and had a history of mental illness, strode through the subway car that afternoon, yelling at passengers and frightening them, according to witnesses. After the foreman announced the verdict, the courtroom erupted with some people cheering the outcome and others responding with anger. So, it says here that the jurors spent more than 3 days trying to come with a unanimous decision on whether Mr. Penny, 26, was guilty of manslaughter, a higher charge, in the end of Mr. Neely, 30. On Friday, the jurors sent 2 notes to the judge overseeing the trial saying that they had deadlocked, and essentially the decision by the judge was to just dismiss the charge and send the jurors home for the weekend, telling them to prepare to begin deliberating on the lesser charge, criminally negligent homicide. Ultimately, they decided to acquit. The decision was a defeat for the office of Alvin Bragg, Manhattan District Attorney. In a statement on Monday, Mr. Bragg said that the jury has now spoken. We deeply respect the jury, etc. So Alvin Bragg, if you might be familiar with him, with the Trump persecutions, he is now considered by people on the right to be an exceedingly political figure who essentially does not represent the law in a bipartisan manner, but specifically attempts to use his position to advance his political agenda. You can see this with this Fox News article. Trump admin urged to launch federal civil rights probe into Manhattan DA's office after Daniel Penny trial. So, it says here that New York Councilwoman Vicky Palladino is urging the incoming Trump administration to launch a federal civil rights probe into the Manhattan District Attorney's office on the heels of Marine veteran Daniel Penny's Monday acquittal, alleging District Attorney Alvin Bragg's charges in the high-profile subway chokehold case, among others, were politically motivated. It's really simple. The Manhattan DA has made this racial, she says. We have seen what AG Bragg has been capable of and has tried to pursue, and I think between Trump and now this is the icing on the cake with Penny. They make it a vendetta. He's definitely political. This is politicized, and I think he needs to be investigated. I think the whole DA's office in Manhattan needs to be investigated, she told Fox and Friends First on Tuesday. So, I think we've seen for a while now very political DAs come into office on the back of George Soros spending a whole lot more money than anyone has ever spent in the history of America. And the results have not been what the public might have wanted, possibly. Definitely the, people who voted a straight Republican, the president, the House, the Senate, everything, in the last elections, might not approve of, let's say, the policies that have been instituted by Soros DAs, district attorneys. And this could be the start of people pushing back against that and demanding change. Essentially, that we go back to a less politicized, less activist way of fulfilling your duties as part of the Justice Department. Of course, people on the left would tell you that this is regressive and trying to undo all the achievements of the civil rights movement. I think this framing is disingenuous and hypocritical. I think people like Alvin Bragg should not be trying to legislate from the position of a district attorney, which is what he said he would do from day one. If you go a bit down on the article, well, let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Alvin Bragg came into this office with his day one memo, which was wrong in so many different ways, saying that he would not prosecute resisting arrest, saying that he would treat certain felonies as misdemeanors, which is not his role. Exactly. It's not his role to try and reform legislation from the bench of a district attorney. What he is supposed to do is not decide what the law is or should be, but rather enforce it. Somehow, I think he and other activists in the judicial system, the justice system, fail to understand this basic principle. If you want to change the law, go into politics and try to get elected to the House and Senate. If you're a district attorney, your position is defending the public, keeping the peace, and enacting justice, as seen to by the people that were elected to make the rules. You don't get to decide what is justice or what is lawful. You have to enforce what other people have decided is lawful and just. And when I say other people, I mean the representative elected by the majority of your population, obviously. Or at least by the electoral system, if you are really trying to nitpick about it, because I know it's not a representative democracy, it's a republic in the US. And fair enough, I'm not criticizing. Now, the Daniel Penny case was very central to the narrative the right has on self-defense and being a good Samaritan. Essentially, people say that if you punish people like Daniel Penny, then you will have others refusing to defend the peace and protect their fellow man in such circumstances. Meaning I remember seeing articles about, which country was it? Perhaps it was in Germany? Or I forgot where. Where essentially a woman was attacked in an adult manner, let's say, on a train ride by an illegal immigrant, person of color. And nobody did anything. Everybody just looked away and did nothing and allowed it to happen, because there have been too many cases where people intervene in such circumstances and then they were punished by the law. Literally, the state punished them, saying that they overdid it, that they were motivated by racism. Essentially, you run the risk of destroying the social fabric. People will no longer feel obligated morally to help each other, and they will instead become very isolated and atomized and selfish. It will be every man for himself. And you don't want to live in such a society, believe you me. What we need is absolutely people like this guy, who was a veteran. So he had the physical ability, the skills, the training to engage in this sort of violence to protect other people. And he protected those who are less capable of protecting themselves. That's something that we want to see. And even if you think that he went a bit overboard, which I'm not sure, because the defendant, the legal defense, argued that Miss Neely is gone because of certain other health problems that he had, substance abuse, some genetic problem, and that it's not wholly or even mainly due to the actions of Daniel Penny. So even if you believe that this was an overzealous case of trying to be a good Samaritan, you still want to err on the side of caution, because you want someone to protect you and your loved ones if they are the ones in danger, in trouble. Even if you yourself are capable of protecting yourself, then think about your children, think about your mother, think about your grandparents, anyone who is less capable than you of physically protecting themselves. You want someone else who is physically able to protect them, and presumably they want you to protect their loved ones if you are the one with the physical ability there in case of trouble. So to the right, this is central to the argument of the right to self-defense and to be a good Samaritan, to defend others in trouble. To the left, obviously, this is the case of a white man who, did violence onto a black man. Essentially, they're just trying to racialize it. I think the racial narrative has run its course for most people, and I think that it was never an honest debate. If you saw the statistics, when asked, people believed that it was like 10 to 100 times more often than it was actually happening that a white cop ended a black suspect. And when they realized that the true government statistics were nowhere near what they've been told, like 10 times to 100 or even 1,000 times, that's what most people believed, they would obviously naturally change their mind about the severity of the problem. I think the left has been creating an echo chamber and trying to amplify certain societal problems to way beyond what they actually were, and this caused a lot of friction that was needless. We could have dealt with what actual real problems we had in a civilized manner without creating so much hatred. And because on the right you had people who actually read the statistics and knew the size and scope of the problem, and on the left you had people who were hoodwinked, who were brainwashed by MSNBC and CNN into believing that the problem was completely out of proportion, then the people on the right said, you just hate us and you're using this as an excuse. And the people on the left said, you are not honest, you're not truly admitting the scope of the problem, and your solutions are absolutely not enough. You're just trying to give us a few crumbs and tell us to go away. And so no conversation could be had. I think once we actually have freedom of speech, to be able to converse with each other without the censorship that is currently online, a lot of these problems would go away. You'll no longer have facts that are verboten to speak of in the common parlance, and as a result, you'll have people actually able to come together to see to the root of the matter and to be able to create a narrative that works for both sides. Essentially, the biggest divide is not in values between the left and right, in my opinion, it's in how we see reality. And in my opinion, this is where the left is wrong and why everybody is moving to the right. Because the right has a more realistic view of the world we live in. And once the left, once again, returns to reality, then people like Elon Musk, who voted Democrat until the last election, Trump, and RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Dave Rubin, so many people on the right today that are prominent are really leftists at heart. Just they are much closer to the people who are on the right today, because the left has left the planet. They are somewhere in outer space in terms of their understanding of reality. And once they actually return to us, we can once again have a civil discussion that's fruitful on the matters of the day, instead of just being people who see reality versus people who are brainwashed by CNN. And I'm not saying it to hate them or humiliate them. This is my honest belief. There are people who just don't understand the world we live in, because basically all of academia. I remember seeing Elon Musk. Do I have it here? Yeah, this one. The wellspring of the mind virus is academia. For every Republican on the faculty at the top-ranked liberal arts college in America, there are 132 Democrats. Now, this is not from this year, this is from a couple of years back. But the rates are astounding. Essentially, all of the experts are left-wing, very left-wing. In fact, a lot of them are Marxists. So, because academia has been conquered, essentially, by very tribal leftist people who gatekeep right-wing people away, if you are informed by them, meaning a lot of people who went to college, they don't have a realistic view of reality, of the world we live in. Same for people who watch the mainstream news. We have to break through this echo chamber. Absolutely have to. Then we'll be able to have a proper discussion. Daniel Penny is a case of a good Samaritan, in my opinion at least. A case of a good Samaritan who got acquitted, as he should be. And hopefully in the future we'll see a relaxation of the standards against self-defense and essentially doing what is right. I remember seeing a lot of articles a couple of years back at the height of the Me Too movement and, very strong feminist overtones to the culture about how men are no longer leaping to the defense of women in the public space, where basically you had many cases of women being attacked violently and all the men around just looking the other way and doing nothing for fear of being punished, because it has happened and it was very publicized. And the left was the one who led the charge. The lefties are the ones who led the charge to persecute these good Samaritans. Definitely not a good idea if you at all want to be safe in a public square. In fact, just today I saw a video by V about a woman who runs a business. She was a big supporter of defund the police, and now that her business has been burglarized, she is very mad that police aren't doing anything. And obviously this is hypocrisy, but this is also her being exceedingly short-sighted and drinking the Kool-Aid. No matter how flawed the police are, we gotta have some form of law enforcement against criminals. There is no perfect world where no criminals exist. Criminality is not a result of a society failing people. In my opinion, criminality is a bad reaction to tough circumstances. You can always choose better. And yes, we're a society that can try to reduce tough circumstances, but in my opinion, the first step to reducing tough circumstances for people is to fight criminality. The left has this idea that being poor causes you to become criminal. In my opinion, having criminals around you causes you to become poor. And this is a narrative that people on the right have been trying to advance with great difficulty in mainstream media for a while now. Yeah, my solution to poverty and crime, have a lot of law enforcement in the community, and after it's actually safe to be there, have a project to try and renovate the place, make it more presentable, and have funds specifically for giving high salaries to teachers who would come there from more successful places for a couple of years. But they won't come if it's not safe there, obviously. If it's dirty and not hygienic and dangerous, even if you offer them good money, they won't come. After you've made it a proper place to live, you give them money to come there and improve their education, and then the next generation will be very, very much more successful than the previous one. This is the correct way to do it. DEI is awful. If you just advance people for the sake of equity based on the color of their skin or their gender or whatever, you'll have unqualified people who tarnish the reputation of the entire group and bring down the actually qualified members of that group. They also don't manage to do their job properly, and then everything becomes worse for everyone. No, what you do is you give them the proper tools they need to become qualified. That way, naturally, their percentage in people who are successful and in positions of power and prestige will increase. You won't have to hire more black people or more women or whatever. You will have more competent black women and black people and women if you just give them the tools. And you know what, this is more correct for black people or Hispanic people who might come from traditionally impoverished and crime-ridden communities than for women, because with women it was never, in my opinion, about not having the tools, or rather it hasn't been for a while now, let's say. Obviously there used to be times when they weren't allowed to go to school and study, etc., but that was a very long time ago. These days, for decades now, women had the tools, but you can check the research and data on biology, on brain differences, and not in terms of ability. I'm talking about in interest. There's lots of research about how even 1-day-old babies differ in the amount of time they would choose to concentrate and look at the face of a person versus some mechanical object, with women spending more time looking at faces, and men, like male babies, boys, are more likely to spend a lot more time looking at the mechanical gizmo. So it's not something that you can bridge by just giving opportunities, and I don't think you should bridge it if it's just a matter of interest. If any woman who can go into STEM, has the opportunity, if every woman who wants to go into STEM can, then what's the problem? I don't need the perfect ratio of 50-50 in everything. I just need everyone to have equal opportunity to make the best out of their cards, out of their personal circumstances. And that's pretty much it. Anyway, I've blabbered on long enough. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.